The public test realm for 10.2 is chugging right along, and it's about time I tackle the Protection Paladin Tier set. I'm actually really glad I waited on this one because it was recently reworked and significantly buffed because the original design was atrocious. After testing the rework set, I actually have a lot of hope for the Protection Paladin comeback, and I'm genuinely excited to share my testing. Let's dive into it. Let's start with the 2-set bonus, since that's the meat of this tier set. Judgment grants a stack of Sanctification, reducing the damage you take by 2% per stack. Upon reaching 5 stacks, your next cast of Consecration is empowered, increasing its damage and healing by 200% and its radius by 30%. Sanctification stacks are reset when your empowered Consecration ends. So, this tier set is mostly focused on Judgment and of course Consecration. Every time you cast Judgment, you're going to gain a stack of Sanctification, reducing the damage you take by 2%, and this is going to stack up to 5 times. Similar to other tank sets, this will grant you up to a 10% damage reduction, which is a welcome buff on any tank, especially the Prot Paladin. This really encourages the Paladin player to spend Judgment charges on cooldown, which is really nothing new. The frequency of casts is actually quite high and typically allows the Paladin to maintain at least 2 stacks of this buff at all times. Notably, this buff will last for 20 seconds, which allows for banking if needed. Once you hit 5 stacks, your next Consecration will be just giga empowered, dealing more damage and healing. During this empowered Consecration, you'll also maintain that 10% damage reduction buff until that Consecration either fades after 14 seconds or it is refreshed. Once that happens, your stacks will then reset, starting at 0. The stacking for this happens passively for the most part, but it's important that you aren't clipping your empowered Consecration, so I do recommend getting in the habit of either planting in it and making sure you're waiting out the full 14 seconds, or get a weak ward to track it. And then when it comes to like the ramping period, I would say in terms of ramping, you're going to get an empowered Consecration every 25 to 30 seconds, which tends to keep the uptime around the 30% mark, which is all around just great. With that out of the way, let's dive into the 4-set bonus. The 4-set bonus reads, while you are within an empowered Consecration, your abilities have a chance to deal 40% bonus damage or healing as fire. This is so unbelievably straightforward, I don't even really think I need to explain it, but here we go. Once you obtain those 5 stacks of Sanctification and you place down your empowered Consecration, you're going to have a pretty decent chance to deal bonus damage as fire. With the empowered Consecration uptime being 25 to 30%, the damage component of this tier set is actually pretty noticeable. Most of the dungeons were actually putting the overall damage of the set between 4.5 to 7% of my total damage, which seems pretty strong in relativity to other tank sets. In terms of bonus healing, this is much less significant, but it still provides a small bonus. Let's take a look at talents because there are some pretty interesting synergies to keep in mind when exploring the talent tree with the tier set in mind. So just note that this is theory crafting and was my general thought process throughout testing. This isn't in any way a solidified guide. Most of the talents that we're going to be looking at are going to tie into the 2-set bonus mainly because the 4-set bonus is really just straightforward and deals extra damage. Anyways, first let's take a look at the class tree. There are 3 talents along the left hand side of the tree, including Golden Path, Seal of Mercy, and Strength of Conviction. Golden Path frequently provides healing to 5 allies within your Consecration. In Mythic Plus, this is going to be great for melee cleave since you'll maximize the value of it. When your empowered Consecration is down, the healing is tripled, resulting in frequent, fast, high-level ticks of healing. This will also have an additional smart heal through Seal of Mercy that will heal the lowest member a second time for 100% of the value. Finally, Strength and Conviction provides a 10% bonus damage and healing to your Holy Power spender, Shield of the Righteous, and Word of Glory per stack. Since you are hugging your Consecration most of the time, this means that the majority of your spenders will be increased by about 20%, which is great for damage, of course, but is also good for off-healing your group, which is what is mostly attractive about the Protection Paladin. Now, I can feel some Protection Paladin mains buttholes clenching. In order to get these talents, we would have to sacrifice talents like Zealot's Paragon and the Dusk of Dawn Capstone, and then of course maybe a point from Seal of the Crusader. There are arguments to be made for keeping or ditching these talents. A lot of times, Consecration's Golden Path overheals just too much, and Seal of Mercy doubles down on that. Strength and Conviction is great for damage, but it does take a lot of effort to get to through these talents or a poor talent choice through After Image. Quickly, since Golden Path does gain a massive boost from the tier set, I was thinking that maybe Incandescence also will have a similar effect, but after testing, sadly, it does not. Imagine though, 30k crits to mobs within your empowered Consecration. That would be sick. Well, anyways, when we glance over at the spec tree, there isn't really much we can take here that will bolster the tier set in any significant way, so more than likely we are going to play a pretty similar build to what we have been playing for the last patch or two. So let's talk pros and cons. Generally, I think the buffs of the set were great. Originally, it required 10 stacks to get an empowered consecration, which obviously took much longer to gain, and then also granted only 1% armor per stack instead of the 2% DR, which sucked. Armor is really only effective against physical damage, and it didn't really hold up to the other tank tier sets were mostly, DR based. The 4-set damage was also doubled from 20% to 40% replicated damage and healing. This easily made this set one of the stronger sets among the tank specializations. The major complaint that I've heard about this set is how it's centered around consecration, and that type of gameplay is extremely punishing on high mobility fights or when movement is forced like from knockbacks or by affixes like Sanguine. While yes, valid issues, the size of the consecration is pretty large, and since the buff lasts for 20 seconds, you technically have time to play around enemy spell queues, or affixes I guess. Personally, I wish they would add moving consecration back into the game, but I can only ever dream. Finally, I do think that the set is enjoyable. It has high uptime, especially when compared to something like the Blood Death Knight set, and it deals a noticeable amount of damage, and is extremely rewarding when you have a bunch of damage banked for the empowered buff, things like Divine Toll, Bastion of Light, and Sentinel. Anyways, I know that the set probably has a bunch of Paladin players with their panties in a twist, but I would like to hear your guys' thoughts below. I will say this though, I'm extremely to play my Protection Paladin next year. Massive shout out to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are what allows me to make videos like this, so thank you. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.